the psalmist, David. So when you understand that once you start, you see yourself sitting in the God seat in triple darkness in the middle of nowhere, and you recognize and observe that position, you sitting in the center of creation. That's the mindset. You sitting in the center of creation and you creating everything. Okay, now you simplify the totality of creation. You got to bring it into your 3D model of yourself. I'm God pretending to be Rod. How am I supposed to behave as God in this 3D realm? This is how I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it this way. I'm going to rewrite who the system told me to be. I'm not going to be Rod. I'm going to be Morpheus Mysticus Magus. Morpheus Mysticus Magus is our alchemical name that was adopted by the character Rod in order to break free from the character Rod and become the embodiment of the liberating mind that I want to be, so that I can help other people liberate their mind. So more.
Oh man, what's up, family? How's everybody doing out there in the world? We are back. Took the weekend off. We back. We ended the week out with a bang with the Sinners movie review. Awesome show. Glad to be back here. Kicking in with y'all on this lovely Monday night. Got an amazing guest today. OG in the game. A living legend in the game. The brother has so many stories to tell. The brother has been there for so many things that we hear about, that people talk about. He was actually there. And I said to myself, I need some OG advice today. I said, I need some OG advice. I need a elder to come on the show and really drop some gems for us, because these things, that we see certain black men going through, a young black brother, Shedeur Sanders, older black brother, Shannon Sharpe. I said, this should be a learning lesson. We shouldn't be out here laughing or just thinking it's entertainment and gossip. This should be a learning lesson for us. I said, who should I get on the show for this one? I said, you know what? I need the elder to come on for this one and give us some wisdom, some knowledge and wisdom. So with that being said, I want to welcome back to the show, back to the platform, none other than Professor James Small.
Listen, Black Magic and your crew and the brothers and sisters who follow your lead and the educational program that you bring forward, I'm just happy to be back.
Indeed.
In Ghana, they got a word that it says etose, meaning, like, how is it? And how's the family with everyone? We've got a lot of crises in the community, and they're worthy of discussion, because our community has to be about how do we learn to grow.
Yes.
We're one of the wealthiest African communities in the world, whose money didn't come, and one of the wealthiest communities in the country, because our money didn't come primarily from criminal enterprise. Matter of fact, very little of our money come from criminal enterprise, because they even discriminate against us as criminals, and they don't let us make anybody. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So most of the big money in this country, especially with white folks, come from criminal enterprise.
Wow, that's a great point.
Black folks have got that 1.6 trillion we spent, or 7 trillion we got that from laboring, going to the jobs, running these few little business we got.
Right.
Being in sports and music, doing the jig for them, but getting paid good for it.
Yeah.
There's no other ethnic group in the country that has made their money more legitimately than the African American. None.
Damn. Never thought about it like that.
Yeah, we ain't committing genocide against nobody out there to steal their land or their gold or their cobalt or their coltan. We ain't done none of that. We just go to work hard every day and pray we can get a job to go to work and take care of our kids and get our kids off into one of the HSBU and get into these other colleges and get these degrees, become doctors, lawyers, teachers, and try to make it. No other group can say that the foundation surplus capital come primarily from non-criminal enterprise, except us.
See this, y'all see why I got him on the show now, right? Y'all see how he started out the show in the first 5 minutes? Listen, I want to do something special for the elder tonight. And I do this for Dr. Valentine, and I do this for Sister Myra. When some of the elders come on the show, it's very important that it's very, very, very important that we take care of our elders. A community that doesn't take care of their elders will never thrive, function, prosper, move forward. So a man in my position, when I have an elder, I have to support them. And I want to start the show out. Today we're doing a special. This show is this is a tribute. This is an acknowledgement. This is a thank you. This is a ashe. This is a what's another word for ashe, Professor, in another language? Om or something? Om.
No, ashe means like we accept or appreciate the energy of the divine. That it is the energy of the divine that making the moment.
Well, the energy of the divine is in you, my brother. Yeah. So but let me just real quick, Professor. I want to share the brother's Cash App. I want us to make it rain on the brother's Cash App. I want the brother to know that the community loves him and all his efforts and what he has been through. The last show he did on my channel was actually about music, and the movie confirmed what Professor James Small said on the last episode. Go to the last episode. Watch what he said about music and how music moves the culture, politics, every area of the culture. Then go look at Sinners and see how powerful music is, and it confirms what Professor James Small say. This man is a living legend. Make it rain on this brother's Cash App today. We support our Elders Day. It's Support Our Elders Day, April 28th. Support Our Elders Day. Make sure you show them love. I'm going to pin it on my phone. With that being said, let me pin this on my phone. Professor, tell the people before we get, let's do it because we're going to keep this thing going. Professor, to start out with, I don't want to waste no time, Professor, and I don't want to code nothing. You on here, elder, you've been through so much in life. It will take some of us 30 years to understand what you understand right now. What we are trying to understand, Professor, is when we see a brother like Shannon Sharpe. Let's start out with Shannon Sharpe. Like I said, this is a learning lesson. The brother got the #1 podcast in the world. I mean, his podcast is so strong. He made Joe Rogan come back to YouTube. The brother is, he's out there, and he got everybody. All eyes is on Shannon Sharpe right now. Little do we know, he's out there messing with a 19-year-old white woman. Some people will say that's none of our business. Some people will say, hey, the brother set himself up. What I want to ask you is, as an elder, when a man is 50, let's say he's around 57. When a man is 57, Professor James Smalls, and we're not going to get to the race thing yet, but let's just say age. When a man is 57, Professor, and he's messing with a woman that's 19, is that a red flag? Is that a sign of insecurity? Is that a sign of being a pedophile? Or is that just a man dealing with a woman who's a grown woman and he just likes younger women? Is that a man who has the free will to decide who he wants to be with, and he's not going to let an older woman dictate that he shouldn't date younger women? Because Monique told him on the show, Shannon, you need a younger woman. You need an older woman. Stop chasing them younger women. That's what the comedian Monique said to him. I want to ask the elder. I want to ask the living legend. What's your opinion? Is something wrong with brothers mentally messing with these young girls? Talk to me, Professor. I need to hear something.
It's not as easy as that. In this culture, much of what we do is dictated by the culture we're in. Okay. Music we listen to, food we eat, clothes we wear, the things we care about, what we find as leisure, what sports we're attracted to. And the same thing goes for a culture's defining the parameters of male-female relationships. And in this culture, the parameters is you don't go below a certain age if you are a certain age. That's the culture. If we lived in Asia or Africa or India, a man 60 or 70 marrying a woman 19, 20, or 30 would not be abnormal at all. but the culture will govern the relationship and the behavior, right? This culture don't have those parameters. This culture, in terms of its religious God, and this is basically a Judeo-Christian culture, and in that culture, it says what Shannon is doing is an absolute no-no. It's not permitted, right? And not just the rule that it's not permitted, but the psychosocial structure of your being says it's inappropriate.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you're crossing that boundary, that culture says it's inappropriate, psychology says it's inappropriate, ethics and morals say it's inappropriate, religion says it's inappropriate, then there's some other stuff going on that needs to be addressed in your character, in your personality, in your value system, in your behavior, and your belief system. Now, you can have all of those things questioned and still be behaving normally, but at least, let's be real, this culture do not accept those types of relationships as normal, nor does it regard it as ethical or moral, nor does it necessarily promote it. Like I said, if you were in India, that would be something nowhere near abnormal, or China, or parts of Africa. But the society will govern the behavior. You know, the culture will determine the parameters of ethics and morals that affects those types of relationships. So here, it's out of bounds. It's inappropriate.
Well,
I don't want
Professor,
to make that too complex, but we do, whether we like it or not, we do live in a Judeo-Christian culture, ethical, moral drum. Even though some of us can break out and make our own space and our own belief cocoons and stuff, that's very few. The general social order say this is what's appropriate in terms of age relationship between males and females. The general social order says this is how you behave when you become a certain image in society. But we know that's not true in America now, because we've seen the Weinstein thing go down. We've seen the guy that died in the prison. I forgot his name. We know that these boundaries is always violated and blurred. You know, and then I'm gonna let you speak. So, but in the general norm of the social order of the value systems that we live, it would appear that that value system says that's inappropriate.
So we have two different systems, let's say, Professor, because I'm gonna try to get some more out of you with this one. And shout out to Valerie Yip. But today is, if you're coming in late, this show is about supporting our elders and giving flowers to our elders who put forth so much. Y'all see me do this with Sister Myra. Y'all see me do this with Dr. Valentine. Today we're doing it with Dr. James Small, where we're showing him love while he's alive, and we're really showing appreciation. You know, love is an action word. It's not a noun. It's not a word that you just say. It's something that you show, something that you do. And this is how we let the universe know who we are. So let the universe know who you are. Let your ancestors know who you are. Let yourself know who you are. And let Professor James Small know the work he put in was not done in vain by making a contribution to Dr. James Small Cash App today. Like I said, I'm dedicating this show to the brother today because the brother's dropping wisdom and he's giving us game that we definitely need. And he's coming from a unbiased, a real good perspective, analyzing things from all different lenses from so many years of living. So the Cash App is pinned at the top of the chat. Make sure, shout out to Valerie. She said, make my small contribution to Dr. James Small. Thank you. Yeah, definitely. So make sure y'all come in here, whatever it is, make sure you support the elder. I need him to know that my people, my channel, we show love. I'm gonna make sure I show the elder some love as well. With that being said, elder, so I often hear elders, I'm gonna get at you about this Africa thing, right? Real quick, and Asia and India and all of that, real quick. I often, Professor, hear people talk about what they do overseas versus over here is Western, Professor, right? This is the Western Euro, but they're colonized over there. What appears to be traditional, the motherfuckers, they got their ass whooped over there, just like we got our ass whooped over here. So
Probably
anything you see them do, Professor, I don't know if they was doing that 10,000 years ago. We looking at a country, a nation, after it was raped, robbed, and pillaged, natural resources taken out by the same group of people that came over here and did the same thing. So is it really smart to compare what they doing over there versus what we doing here? Or should we go with our God instinct?
No.
Something
like
this.
The mistakes we make, and we do it with us over here too, this assumption we lost everything.
Okay.
This assumption the white man took all our culture, he took everything.
Good point.
He may have taken a lot of the aesthetics.
Mm-hmm.
He took our language, but we created all kinds of Creole. Gullah Geechee is a Creole.
Mm-hmm.
Haitian language is a Creole. Jamaicans are speaking a Creole. Barbados, they're speaking a Creole. That's taking our language, grammar structure, and their vocabulary structure, and take our meaning structure and superimpose it and create a language that sounds like them, but it's really still us, right? But we don't just do that with language. We've done it with religion. We've done it with the spirituality. We've done it with almost everything that we were able to do it and survive. But we still are poisoned and polluted and infected by his, what is it called? His mean, you know? And the same thing in Africa and Asia. Africa and Asia has been contaminated and infected by European cultural poison and value system poison. But there still is, especially me, I consider myself, I think I'm a historian. I love to read, I love to research, I travel around the world, I talk to the old people, I go in the shrines that even the people on the land scared to go into, trying to find, how did we do this before we met them? How did we do this? The reason for doing the things we did was different. A man and a woman in Africa, polygamy was not the norm, right? In our ancient society, one man, one woman was the norm. And here's what is the basis of polygamy. And it even exists today. For every one male child, there's 3 female child being born. What are you going to do with the surplus 2 female? African society says you factor them into the family through a polygamous structure where they're a part of the same ethical, moral principle, family love relationship as one woman would be. Europe decided to turn their surplus into prostitutes.
Good point.
That's a big difference.
Wow.
While he's talking about monogamy, he's got that 2 extra women per one man and prostituting to him. And he's created a whole cultural order of that. And that's the culture he brought over here. You know, that's the culture he's taken everywhere. Where in Africa, we said, okay, how do we do this so we have order and balance? That those women are human beings too, but there isn't enough men to go around. So those men who have enough wealth, big farms, good hunters, that they could take care of more than one woman, must then do that up to a certain number, right? But you must provide them with the same home you provide that first wife with, and then you don't make those choices. Your first wife, your original mate, make the choice of who you get to mate with. You can't say, oh, she's cute, I want her. No, that's not how it worked. Because it wasn't about that kind of aesthetic choices. It was about family structuring and creating a next generation and having order in a community. And so when it comes to that's just getting that one out of the way, because I know it sometimes comes up, right? Now, when it comes to the age thing, many of the African society and Asian societies are now saying girls should not get married as young as they used to. They used to get married, especially in a lot of the Muslim countries as well, as young as 13, 12, and so forth. And they said, no, that child body needs a time to develop, to mature to a certain level so that she can fulfill the role of being a mother and being a part of the reproductive structure of the society. And so a lot of that's changing. And the reason I mentioned it earlier, because that was a norm in many countries for a certain class of people, usually the wealthier class of people, because they could have multiple mates, because there was multiple women available for that purpose. And it wasn't just sexual. This wasn't about sex hardly at all. This was about recreating family, because people had an idea of what being a human being was, and an idea of what being God was, and an idea that the God and the human was the same thing manifesting on different planes. And so you couldn't violate one without violating the other. That's what culture and spirituality is about. But we don't live in a God spiritual system. We live in a Christian ideological system, a Muslim ideological system, a Judaic ideological system, where they have a political structure that they call religion governing the ethical moral practices of society. And so that's where the determinations come in, what is right or wrong in terms of age relationship between men and women in a society. And in their society, and I don't give Western society any uppance, okay? I think it's the lowest social order ever created.
Oh my God! Damn, that's cold, Professor.
Okay?
That's cold,
So,
man.
Yeah, we got to be clear about that. This whole concept that we call Western civilization is based on genociding other people. The whole concept, from its beginning to now. And not just genociding, but after genociding the population, assuming the identity of that population, and then taking credit for that population's contribution to creating civilized humanity. Now, in the context of that, we're trying to be ourselves and trying to find out what was our ancestors. That's why I would say history erases the mystery. But if you don't try to find out what your ancestors were doing, you'll end up doing what their ancestors were doing, and their ancestors was killing you. So you end up killing yourself. Socially, culturally, politically, medically, and otherwise, as we are doing, and most other groups are doing. But there've always been that fight to say there is a different way to understand how to have a civilized relationship that can produce the next generation. And that civilized tool that we fashion out of Africa is called a family. And it starts with a man and a woman agreeing to come together to reproduce and to build that sort of family, but come together under, and this is why we invented marriage, come together under the witness of the rest of the community, who would then hold them responsible for doing the most appropriate thing for one another and for the offspring. That's all weddings about. That the community is saying, we witness you making this agreement that you're going to take care of one another. We witness you making this agreement you're going to take care of this woman and not abuse her. We witness you're going to raise those children and make sure they're healthy enough and expand to be greater in the next generation. So the community is witnessing that, and the culture is then to hold you responsible. That's not what's going on over here. This is a free for all, do your own thing, whatever your instinct and your itchy desire requires you to fulfill, you rationalize, especially if you got money.
Let me introduce race to the topic, to the equation, Professor Small. There's been a great debate about Black men and their love or their lust for white women, and especially when they get money, a lot of people feel as though they run straight to the white woman when they get money. Psychologically, I want to ask you, do you feel that Black men feel as when they get with a white woman, when they're conquering a white woman, when they have sex with a white woman, is that like a side way of conquering the white man? Like, hey, I got his woman, so I may be under white supremacy, but I got his woman. So do they feel like they're conquering the white man? What's going on psychologically for Black men to be that lustful toward white women?
Well, I think sociology would say what you just said is very true on those occasions. But the myth has been that black men tend to go towards white women, but at 78 or plus percent, more than that, black men are married to black women.
Mm-hmm.
And so we give that percentage of crippled people more play than they deserve.
Than it deserves.
And
Okay.
we keep defining ourselves by the least of ourselves rather than defining ourselves by the greatest of ourselves.
That's why I'm talking to you. I like that. That's why I'm talking to you.
And so the same thing with black women. We'll see the few who are in the media, in the celebrity status realm. And remember that realm of music and movies and sports is controlled by white elite, not by any black folks. We don't control anything in the sports realm. That's why we saw that happen to the young brother Sanders the other day. We don't control the music. We see how many of our people were killed in trying to control music, from Sam Cooke to Tupac Shakur and Biggie. They were murdered because they tried to take the instrument that was giving them wealth and greatness and make it a useful tool for the socialization and the cultural development of their own people. And they were removed because there's somebody who's controlling that. And so they control our images in the same way in terms of who we end up mating with when we are in those institutions. You know, they bring us the drugs. They make sure we got the drugs. They make sure we have the women from other racial stock. They make sure that the wealth don't end up in the black community that they're helping us to get. And make sure we never get the power to make that institution give us wealth that we control. And so we got to look at, when we think of who are the black men we're talking about that are marrying outside of the African race. Who are the black women we're talking about marrying outside of the African race? Look at what area of profession they're in. And it is in an area of profession, for the most part, not totally, that is controlled completely by white men. And not just by white men, in most cases, gender confused white men. Which is a whole nother piece. Right? And so we have to, when we make the criticism, we have to look and see who are those people. Because the majority of black men is chasing that goddess from heaven, that African women. You know? And the same thing with African women coming to African men. But we don't make that the play. We talk about the crippled ones, the ones who committed the crime against the race, and make them normal. They're not normal.
You know,
I've been married to a little black lady. She down there. We've been together 53 years, going on 54 years.
Awesome.
You know, and I think she was 19 and I was 26, and we thought that was too old of a gap. But we know that many people marry women 10 years younger, 20 years younger, and raise good family and have good family communities. But there's an extreme where you have to make sure, because it's all about the conscious development, the psyche development, the spiritual development, the maturity, and even the physical development of especially the women, because the women always get the short end of the stick in these relationships. And then when you're dealing with people with a lot of wealth and a lot of power, as we can see the behind the scenes stuff coming out with all of the different people that's going to prison now for having all of these trafficking going on with young women, we know that this has been going on in this country from time immemorial, still going on right now on the highest level among a certain class and a certain income bracket of American citizens. Trying to keep it clean and not put you in no trap.
I get what you're saying. I appreciate it.
You hear what I'm saying.
Yeah, no, I definitely appreciate it. Let me ask you personally, Professor, because some comments from Cat Williams and Monique, they was giving Shannon Sharpe advice because he's one of the wealthy black men out here, and they don't want to see him ruin his empire. So that's why Cat Williams said something. He said a white woman could take down a powerful black man in 2 weekends. And Monique was talking about him dating young girls. Let me ask you, you personally, do you feel as though men should put their purpose before anything else in life? Like, let's say before your wife or your family, you're a purpose-driven man. You put your purpose first. Or do you feel as though family should come first, or your relationships should come first, and then you could pursue your purpose? What do you think about men who are purpose-driven, who want to be powerful, who are powerful, who feel like they're powerful? Should they put their purpose first? That way, they feel like they won't make mistakes. And when it comes to women,
what the purpose is, because if you just want to make wealth, and if making wealth mean doing all of the abusive thing that has been done in the pretense capitalist society has done, I wouldn't agree with that. If you're saying, I think that race should always be first. Well, let me put it in the order it should be. The thing we see as the divine, that's first. The thing we know as the race, that's second. The thing we know as ourself, that's third. And the thing we know as the family, that's fourth. Okay.
I like that.
Because in order to build a family, I've got to build a self worthy of building a family. In order to build a self, I have to have an understanding of the race that I'm trying to create in terms of what we call ma'at, the harmony, the balance, inwards and outwards. In order to understand that, I must comprehend what I call the divine, which is the universe itself, right? And all of its manifestations. And that's African culture, right? That's African sacred science, right? And so we need to understand our people weren't just randomly inventing religions like the West have been doing. We were like looking up and studying, like, what are we in the midst of this greater thing that we now call a universe? That's why the Dogon could see a star that other people can only see through a microscope, long before they even invented the microscope. Because they understand that this thing we live as a part of, we don't live in the universe. We are a part of that universe. We are actually a replica of the universe. Right? And understanding and comprehending that, and then being able to take it outwards, as well as absorb the observation and bring the same understanding inward, is what we call African sacred science, what we call a normal African. You know,
hey.
And if you want to throw the name African out and go get a Kibalan and all of that stuff, you can do that too. But there was no al in any African language before Arabic. So the al-Kibo ain't going to work, brothers and sisters, okay? But we'll come back to that some other time. We don't know what our brothers and sisters, we've been around here millions and millions of years. We don't know what they call it, if they call it anything. But we have decided to call it Africa. If we want to change that tomorrow, fine, we can change it. But right now, that's what most of us call it. That's what most of us call ourselves. So that's why I use it, so people can understand that. But the thing with Shannon is simple, and it's not as complex as we would make it, or even I'm trying to make it sound. Having gone through 500 years of genocide. See, slavery wasn't no work program. That was genocide. We were worked to death in most cases in 6 years and replaced by some more brothers and sisters that would work to death in 6 years. And in the 6 years, they didn't just die from overworking. Many of them were just slaughtered outright. It's called genocide. And when it goes on, not for 60 years, not for 30 years, not like some of these people are talking about their Holocaust and the thing, it should have never happened to them. But they're talking about events that happen over a 30, 40-year period. And if it's that catastrophic, imagine the event over 500 years of genocide, mental genocide, physical genocide, spiritual genocide, linguistic genocide, cultural genocide. Every aspect of the human being is attacked by a monster who has no parameters on how destructive he can be towards another organism. So given that understanding, how can we mate with that thing? How can we? How can we even love it? I hear people say, well, it's about love, and we got to forget about the past. The past, if you understand reality, is your present. What past? Show me something happening now that wasn't happening in that space of time that you call 500 years ago, 400 years ago, 300 years ago, 200 years ago. What is it that's happening now? What is it that was happening in that so-called then that is not happening now? So how do we factor and arrange ourselves in relationship to 500 years of a behavior? Nobody from that group was able to organize and come and say, stop it. And don't tell me about Abraham Lincoln. Because had we not got in the Civil War, everybody be whistling Dixie a long time ago. We almost whistling Dixie now with this new administration. So when you've been through 500 years of genocide, how can you take the children of the architect and make it the mate and the producers of your next generation? That's insanity at its highest level.
Wow. Yeah, you said on that note, let me give a shout out once again for Professor's on here. He's raw and uncut, ladies and gentlemen. And yeah, he ain't holding back. So shout out to Professor James Small. If you're just coming in today, we are showing love and support to Professor James Small. I pinned his Cash App at the top of the chat. I want everybody to support the brother. It's very important that we support our elders. We got almost 2,000 people in here. I want Professor to know that we show him love and that all the work that he's done, whether he was with Malcolm X, whether he was with Tupac, whoever he was with at the time, he's been with some of the greats that we read and we hear about. He's talked to them. He's kicked it with them. So make sure we show this elder love while he's still on this earth, still doing the work, helping people produce like the series. What's that show you help?
Godfather of Harlem.
Godfather Harlem. Yeah, he's helping. He's adding value.
To Forrest Whitaker. Now that's a beautiful brother.
Indeed.
World don't know that brother. Here's a beautiful brother. Let me drop those signs on. Here's a guy who's running 3 refugee camps. 2 in Africa and 1 in Colombia. How many people know?
I didn't know.
Yes, sir. 1 in Uganda, 1 in Southern Sudan, and 1 in Colombia. Here's a guy who's been studying and can trump me in the Yoruba and Lukomé religious and spiritual tradition of Africa. I went by the brother's house. The brother got a better library than me. I was like, embarrassed. I was like, oh God, I thought I had a library. I mean, I got some first class.
Yeah.
My bro, I go like, okay, that explains a lot. But there's a lot of us out here who we may assume because we are in that matrix of the music industry and the matrix of the music industry and the movie industry and the sports industry, controlled by these demons. But some of us surviving it. Some of us are surviving it. And even, we'll come back to the race thing for a second, right? I know brothers and sisters who have married European beings. And I've seen them have beautiful relationships and raise beautiful children. And I've seen genuine love. And I can't knock that to the degree except to say what I said before. In order to make sure what occurred over the last 500 years is never replicated again, we should be very incisive for at least 500 years. Okay? Racially incisive. Just to guarantee that we can restore back to black and maintain that. Not just the look and the color of our skin, because what people are not against us for the color of our skin. That's never been why. The ignorant ones from the bottom of the barrel, they think it's about the color of our skin, so they hate me walking down the street. But the middle class and the ruling elite understand it's about my mind and what my mind can bring to the game of life. that can put in check his animal behavior that he's calling civilization. That's what he's concerned about. You know? And he's
Indeed.
also cognizant of the fact that he needs to use my mind to maintain the integrity of these institutions that he uses to exploit the rest of the world. Because if you look at most of the inventions in America and Britain and France over the last 100 years, 90% are African inventions. But brute force didn't allow us to exercise ownership of it or determine how it was used. So they not only want to control our behinds, they want to control our minds. But they not only want to control our minds, they want to make sure that our minds do not create a worldview and a value system that would eradicate the infection in the human genome psychologically that they've created through their behavior over the centuries.
Indeed. All right, Professor. I want to, with that being said, I want to move to the topic, and I appreciate you dropping that about Shannon Sharpe and us being conscious of our history, our past, and by being conscious of our past, we are conscious of our present. And and since we're talking about the past and the present, I want to talk about a young brother, Deion Sanders' son, Shedeur Sanders, who many thought, what you might say, why is Brother Rich bringing this up? It seems as though it's a reoccurring theme, and it's important to address this because I don't want young brothers who express themselves with confidence to get afraid or feel as though, hey, I can't do that because if I do that, then this might happen. So I would love for elders such as yourself to address, is there a huge fear in this world of a black man in confidence? What's going on where it seems as though it could be Muhammad Ali, where he taught confidence. It could be a Floyd Mayweather. It could be a dad like LeVar Ball who talks confident about his sons. It could be a dad like Serena Williams' father who talks confident about his daughters.
The same thing has been said about all of them.
It just happens over and over.
People in the same media, all right? And I was thinking today when I was reading some of the stuff about Shedeur Sanders and his father, the same thing they're saying about Deion, they said it about Serena Williams and their father. I remember when their brother first started and his babies came out and was beating up everybody.
Yeah.
But they could not give that black man credit for loving his babies. And they could not give him credit for bringing out the genius in his babies. That black man ain't supposed to be able to do that. He's supposed to go to the white man to bring out the genius in our baby. He's supposed to take him to Harvard and Yale and Princeton, and then only then. But no, we can't do that. Deion can't send two sons to the NFL in one season. One little black man who can go from one college, Jackson State, I wish he had stayed at Jackson, but we understand what all that meant in the move, but can raise that football program in Jackson and go to the Colorado Buffaloes and bring them out of the mud and put them on the mountaintop. And then produce two beautiful young men. He has 5 beautiful children, and he just had a grandchild, but to produce two beautiful young men who were going to the NFL at the same time. But if you look at the stats on Shedeur, on the quarterback, the brother should have been the number 1 pick. His stats alone, even in the Heisman Trophy, I think he came in 8th. He should have been higher up on the list in the Heisman Trophy. And that voting. But because his father was the black man and taught his black children to bring out the genius and the best in them, they can't accept that. When you look at it, he had 37 touchdowns and 24 in Colorado. He had 64 touchdown throws in the 2 years he was at Colorado. You know, that's up there. He was the Big 12 conference player of the year last year. You're up there. and you're not even being considered. You end up being 144. What's that about? It's not about his skills. Everybody, I've seen him play, and I was a football player. I played at Savannah State, y'all, in Georgia. I came from Harvard High School, and I had a grandson who just finished college. We thought he was going to go to pro, but he's satisfied being a coach back in our hometown. So football has been a part of my family, and we understood. I had my cousin Mac Austin played for the Redskins. We played together. Richard Allen, who played up in Canadian Bowl and came back, I think, for but off of my team, my high school team, 3 of them went to pros. I thought I would too. I was one of the fastest guys out there, but my politics was just a little too radical for the time. But I understand the dream. And it isn't just that that's the only thing they could do, because those young men are going to college. They're getting other skills. They're getting other tools. But that's something you want to do. People may not remember Bob Hayes, who got caught in the same kind of trap in Florida when he got out of school a year ahead of me back in '63, and he ended up in prison. But he was the fastest man in America. But guess who was the only other person that could outrun him but couldn't get the record? And that was me. So I thought I was going to be the biggest track star in the U.S., but that wasn't for me. Somebody else became that, but that's cool. So I understand what that dream is and what that aspiration is and the work you got to put in to get there. You don't just go out there and throw a football. You got to practice. You've got to exercise. You've got to train. You got to go through some pain. You're going to be mad with your daddy and mad with your coach for those extra hours and the extra run around that field and the extra drills and the extra pushing those dummies to make you the best of the best.
Let me ask you something, Professor. I always hear people say when you, I forget the exact saying, but they basically say when you teach a woman, you teach a nation. And this is why they have to do what they do with women, because the woman is going to teach that child and she's going to give birth to a nation.
Right.
With considering that, I'm thinking about that quote and that saying, but I'm also looking at what we just talked about. And it seems as though, tell me if I'm wrong. Do you think I'm wrong? It seems as though this system of what we call white supremacy views father who is raising his children the right way, upright, successful, conscious of self, confident, proud. They consider that more dangerous than a woman who may be giving the children the same values. It seems like when a man steps on the scene with, raising his kids a certain way, he immediately gets attacked. But it seems like when a black woman steps on the scene with a child, they're a little more accepting of that. If the dad's not around, they okay, boom, boom, boom. But it seems like when the dad steps on the scene, it's like, oh shit, no, this can't go down. So what's your opinion on that, Professor?
Well, the illusion of the white man, because his woman have been marginalized and made weak. He thinks the black woman, when he tries to marginalize her, makes her weak, but it don't. He underestimates the strength of the black woman, because all them black men that make good father was raised by them black women who were good mothers.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And so he doesn't understand. And when he tried to kill off the black man, especially that period during the 1900s to the 1970s, when it was a straight out genocide against the black man, by the state genocide, the national government genocide, the culture genocide, that black woman stepped up. Matter of fact, they wrote a whole report, I think Monahan on that thing, right? Saying, well, we killing the black man, but that black woman, she got this. And they didn't expect that. They thought because if you kill the white man, the white woman would lose it all. See, that doesn't happen to the black race. The black woman had the black man's back, but nobody want to make that song and write that book, right? Because that black woman have kept this family together, even when the black man was being slaughtered at her feet. She understood that she and that black man was the same being, just different manifestations. And when that black man is there as that partner and that support, and that male element, then you get Venus Williams and Serena Williams. Then you get Shiloh and Shedeur, and it goes on and on. You know, Carol and I, we have 4 kids. All 4 of them have master's degree or higher, 2 with doctorate degree. I have 2 adopted kids in Ghana. One got a master's degree, the other got a PhD. And we can go on that when that man and that woman can work together, even though we have trauma now, we didn't just have no breathe through the woods. That woman and me, we must have fought the 50 or the 53 years. But we made a commitment to raise the next generation and to try to figure out what are the African rules that will let us do this better than the European rules are going to allow us to do. And sometimes we don't use the term African. Sometimes we use the word black. Sometimes we don't use the word black, but we know what we mean. There's some people who won't wear their hair natural. They won't wear an African dress. They won't wear a buba. They won't even touch the red, black, and green flag. But they'll do all of those things that those who are doing that do, and go to church every Sunday because they understand what they're doing and why they're doing it. They understand what intergenerational transmission of wisdom is about. And no matter what the West think they've done, they have never killed us. You have not killed us. I am so sorry to tell you. You didn't kill us. You may have made us a little dizzy and knocked us about quite a bit and made us forget a whole lot.
Right.
But you did not kill the African woman and man and their concept of how this universe should work.
Professor, I see this comment and I want to ask you your opinion on this comment since we're talking about confidence, black confidence, and I guess other races or other people being intimidated. Even black people get intimidated when they see a confident black man. It throws the whole world off. The whole world gets thrown off because it's like, who the hell is he to still be confident? But anyway, this comment from this individual right here says humility would have made a difference. In this particular instance, should Shedeur have been more show more humility? Yeah.
What do you call it humility? What is it that they did that wasn't humble? Bring out the best in themselves and praise themselves when nobody else did? You know, those young men and their father brought out the best in themselves. And from what I read about them, they're a very God-fearing family. No matter what religion you use, there's only God. That family seemed to have believed fully in the divine, whether they call him Jesus, Muhammad, Allah, Oludamare, whatever. They seem to be rooted in that. They seem to be rooted in bringing out the best they can be. But we've got to go. They had, when I was young, we used to call it a shuffle. When you went around white people, you're supposed to bow your head and kind of slide your feet a little bit and deliberately show them some deference of humility and weakness so that they would feel comfortable with you. And whenever you tried to be who you were being arrogant. But when you want to build statues to his and write books to his and praise them in all the ways that he praised them, there was nothing arrogant about that. You know, George Washington never told a lie. He was a liar most of his life. He was a genocide, a murderer, and a rapist. But he gives us something else, and that's his whole modus operandi, this hypocritical pretense of what humility is, you know, and what arrogant is. No, that family deserves to be wherever they should be. Who made the difference that they were going to not care about the statistics by which they say they choose people because they said he wasn't humble enough to white people? So the statistics don't matter. So your whole NFL is a scam and a lie, and your draft is a lie then? If you didn't pick the best you got when you created all these rules to judge them and their talents? And his talent said he should not have been at 144. His talent should said he should not have been in round 5. He should have been in round 1. His talent, according to you,
Mm.
said that's where he should have been, no matter who his daddy was. And his daddy was one of the best of the best. But
Yeah.
if his daddy was a drunkard or went out and raped somebody or was running around using drugs, and no matter how good he was, you would do to him what you did to Dwight Gooden and what you did to what's the other brother who Dwight's fan? No, I know what you do. I see what you've done to my people.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, humility is one of the beautiful qualities, but let's put humility in its own context. Being humble to a predator who uses the NFL like a plantation and have men and women out there working for them, even when they're crippled, by bandaging them up and stitching together and filling full of drugs so they can win some more money. That is nothing to be humble to.
Mm. Professor, you get Professor.
And family in the pros, and still have some in the pros, and have children, grandchildren in college playing football. I know exactly what the deal is.
His brother said the NFL CEO said the inmates ain't gonna run his prison. Wow.
Absolutely, and that's exactly what they got going on.
Wow.
They made billions, while most of those men in that NFL will not live to be 70 because they're so broken and battered. Most of them will live their life out in poverty, having made all that money for them.
Professor, I'm curious to know. All right, I'm having this conversation with you, Professor, and it's 2025, Professor. You've been around before me. You've seen things I haven't seen. I've only read about. When I've read about the Negro Leagues and I've read about Jackie Robinson, and these people he was the first black this or the first black that, the first black baseball player, the first black. What was your thoughts? Whatever time period, I don't know if this was the 60s, the 50s, when this was 60s. When this was going down, Professor, because oftentimes what was happening at that time ain't what we think was happening at that time. How was black people responding to the Negro Leagues not being around no more and Jackie Robinson joining the majors and us integrating
they
into?
Didn't understand none of that in real time.
They didn't understand it
in real time.
In real time, they didn't. Yeah.
When we look back and say, "Oh shoot,
yeah,
we lost something." At that time, and I remember we had I lived on a plantation. We had the only radio.
Right.
We had to have a long wire and take it out to the long pole and the whole thing. Everybody came to our house because either Sugar Ray Robinson was fighting, or Charles was fighting, or Joe Louis was fighting. All we knew is that we had heroes. We had images of ourselves greater than what the white community see. You understand? And so that's what we saw. So in my front yard would be 100 people. Mr. Charles was boxing, or Joe Louis was boxing, and we were bringing them water and things, and because we needed to know that we were greater than they were telling us we were. Because the thing that was telling the story for the most part was their media. We had our media, but our media had limitations. We had the Afro-American, we had the Amsterdam News, we had hundreds of media, small media, and Jet and Ebony and all of those. But we could not have it speak to our presence in the greater society and the way we wanted to be seen. Now, despite the dominance and the control of Black music, young Black people use hip hop to break open the door wider, where we could look at and explain ourselves to ourselves in the greater society. And they weren't as confined as we were. The reason we went into those restaurants and sat in, the reason we were marching and picketing supermarkets, because we wanted to expand ourselves. We did not want it to be constricted and limited. Okay. And so those great heroes like the Jackie Robinsons and there were so many of them, we didn't understand when they were joining the White League. We thought that we as a race could now expand beyond the boundaries that was on us. We didn't understand that meant losing something significant that we had, like the Negro League.
Right.
What all the implications of it and the financial um, uh, viability of it for the Black community. And so, but you didn't see that in real time because it didn't happen at once.
Right.
It was something that happened slowly over decades. And we woke up and we realized something was gone because we thought we had bought into a greater human community. To find out that what we had bought into was a non-human community. You know.
I love that honest response, Professor. This is spoken from somebody who that was such an honest response. I really appreciate that. Wow, that clears up a lot of things that I had in my mind. I'm glad you answered that the way you did, and I'm glad I had this conversation with you tonight, Professor. I want to get to a couple. We passed the hour mark. I want to get to a couple of questions from the family before we get out of here. But before I do that, if you're coming in late, David said, great discussion. Yeah, I appreciate it, David. Before we do that, hold on, I gotta write this again. I wish King Simon was here. Give me 1 second, y'all, Professor. Damn. I want to share Professor's Cash App. We are celebrating Professor James Small today, and we are showing the brother love via Cash App. That's a way that we can show love to some of the guests.
And I appreciate that very, very much.
And indeed, no, definitely, Professor. I always look out for the elders. I'm verified. I got the verification check from my elders because I always show love to my elders. I appreciate what y'all contributed to this realm. Make sure you go to Cash App, family. We got over 2,000 people. Make sure we show this brother love for all the amazing work that he has put forth to the people over the years. The Cash App is $ Dr. James Small. Make sure you get the spelling right, family. I appreciate y'all for appreciating our elder. And let's get to a couple of questions before we get out of here. Great conversation tonight, Professor. Shout out to everybody in the chat. Definitely a learning lesson for all of us, what we see happening in the mainstream with Shedeur Sanders and the whole confidence thing and Shannon Sharpe. So let's get to a couple of questions from what you said, Professor.
Yeah, the European white community, especially as male, know they cannot compete with the Black male on an even playing field in nothing, in any realm, any profession. And so this whole sociology of demeaning, marginalizing and minimalizing, then criminalizing the Black male, is a part of how white male deal with their fantasy of supremacy. The only thing supreme about them is their ability to commit genocide.
Okay. Let's get to some questions. Hold up. Somebody said, what was everyday life like for you during those times living off of a plantation?
Then it was the closest thing to heaven because we lived in the woods, right? And the plantation that I lived on, we worked for a family called the Vanderbilt. Now, we didn't come from that plantation. In the 1920s, my grandparents went there to work. We come from the Freewood. The Freewood is the Maroon community on one side. One of my great-grandmother came from Sierra Leone, and my great-grandfather came from Uganda on my mother's mother's side. The rest of my family, my mother's father's side, I only know that they come from the Freewood. We don't even know how long they've been here. The Freewood is the Maroons, the people who live in the bush. So they call us the Freewood ends. You understand? So it was the people coming out of the Freewood after the First World War to find work because they were primarily farmers. right, and fishermen, because we lived near the ocean and the rivers. And so on the plantation, we were just free. I didn't even want to wear shoes to school. You know what I'm saying? I went to school in a one-room classroom with one teacher, an angel named Miss Betty Murray. She died about 4 years ago, and I was able to speak at a funeral, and we remained friends throughout my life. She was my mother. And the most extraordinary being who nurtured us for our parents. We used to go when we were young and work in the morning. 4 o'clock in the morning, we go into they had nurseries where they grew all these azaleas and camellias and all these beautiful flowers down in South Carolina. And we little kids, we would go in the field, we would pull the weed, the little grass out of the flowers. So we would do that from like about, say, 5 in the morning until about 7. Then we go home and wash up and go to school, right? And that's when you're like really young. And then when you get another age, you work. They had chicken. There was a big turkey farm and chickens. I'm talking, this is before Purdue. We were Purdue. And so we would work feeding them and chasing them around and playing with them and taking them to the slaughterhouse too and watch them get clean, packed, put in ice, put on trucks and taken out all across the South. And when I got older, I became the wood boy in the big house where the boss lived and the rich people. And then I became the butler one day. First the butler to the kids and then the butler to the owners. And so, and we had relatively decent relationship with the family because our parents were the nanny that raised the people who were our bosses at the end of the day. It was this real kind of incessive social relationship on a plantation. There was only a few white families there. The majority of the families were black families. And when I graduated college, they gifted me with a full scholarship to Yale University, which I turned down because I was already into my movement consciousness stuff, and I didn't want to take anything. And me and that lady remained friends until the day she died. I actually spoke at a funeral. That was one of the things he put in her will, because we were friends. And so growing up on this plantation wasn't quite what we heard. Some of them were brutal places, but in South Carolina, you know, we were a majority population. A lot of people forget that blacks were in South Carolina was one of the largest population of black in the country. Yeah. So, and because of the malaria mosquitoes, I live along the riverbanks. Whites didn't tend to stay in those areas, so we lived in those areas kind of like just free folks. Nobody wanted to come up in there with that mosquito, and so we had a different kind of approach to life. My grandpa was a Moorish science person, and he was a Freemason, Prince Hall, and so I come out of that milieu of these fighting black folks. We weren't even interested in integration. When we tried to picket, you know, we were picketing the Strand Theater and the Palace Theater in Georgetown, South Carolina. Well, my grandfather and his friends, they went, I don't know where those old people got a movie projector from, right? But what deal they covered the white folks to give them some movies, but they moved our movies to our church, so we didn't have to go and picket the white folks theater. And I didn't think much of that then, but later years, I'm saying, wow, what beautiful consciousness. What beautiful consciousness. They said, our children aren't going to humiliate themselves begging to be with those people. No. You want to watch a movie? We showed a movie in St. Anne's Baptist Church on Wednesday night. Hop along, Cassidy, and whatever else we was watching back then. But as a family of African people living on the plantation, we literally lived in African villages, just as we did on the continent for the most part. And remember, many of us came here before the Christopher Columbus experience. And so that group that came before the Columbus, it isn't just the Malian exhibition. There were millions of us here already before Mali, the Malian exhibition came. But we lived primarily in Central South America, building all those temples and pyramids and stuff. The Malian exhibition would come and we lived, a lot of us along the Gulf Coast and in Florida and along the coast of South Carolina up to North Carolina, even up to Virginia. But when the white man came, his diseases killed most of us off because we were not immune to those diseases. And the remaining of us, we married those who came on the slave ship and became one African. And that's the thing that the brothers, a lot of them who are in the foundation of Black America is missing. Yes, we are the foundation, but we also the earth foundation. We were everywhere first. We are indigenous to everywhere. before anybody else came into being. So don't get caught up in no illusion of confusion, thinking there was some black folks in North America that grew up out of the ground. You can't even find their history. You got to feel little fragments. Do the research. Find out when we got here, how we got here. Don't tell me Columbus said this, Columbus said that. He was a liar anyway. And so I don't trust much of nothing he says. If I know that we were here, because you can look at my face and see that I'm one of those we that was always here. You see me? Me? You know, I'm from the Tuscarora and from the Shakora nation and the African nation that predates the slave ships and the African nation that came on the slave ship. I am an amalgam of all of them from coastal South Carolina. And many of us are like that. That's why we're ruddy and brown. We even mated with the Asiatics that we call Indians before any whites got here. We had been here with them fighting and battling for 10,000 years. For the states.
Okay. All
history
right.
Let's erase the mystery.
I just seen somebody keep asking the same questions. Give me. All right, here we go. How does a young man navigate who is influential in our cultural integrity, yet outnumbered by the enemy in spiritual warfare? What is your advice to us in the spiritual warfare against the people? He done asked this question 10 times in the chat, Professor. So he wants an answer.
It's a question that bugs everybody because the answer is too simple. Nobody believes it. You've got to master your history. History erases the mystery because when you know your history, and I'm not just talking about Mansa Musa, your grandma's history, your grandpa's history, your great parents' history, the history of the black people in the community of Arkansas, Alabama, Mississippi, Louisiana, South Carolina, Virginia, where they grew up, and then began to look at Mansa Musa and the others before they came here. And then do as much deep research as you can, and those have written on the fragments of information we have about those of us who were here, you know? Because we weren't into some arrogance trying to prove we were here before anybody else. This is some new little white consciousness thing we into. Of course we were here. But what happened when all of us got here? Study the word amalgamation and know what it means and understand why our people did it. If I'm dying off from white diseases, wouldn't I marry the black folks who was immune to the white disease so I could live on? Some things are so simple, we are scared of them. African spirituality is not a religion. African spirituality is not spookism. African spirituality is what you call science. The white man took your spirituality and took the spirit out of it. He took your sacred science and took the sacred out of it, and he called it science. That's African spirituality. Understanding quantum physics and how you and quantum physics relate. Understanding your relationship to light. Understanding your relationship to vibration. Understanding your relationship to dimensions. You know, when we talk about Shango and Ogun, these are not no god of war. Ogun, I got an Ogun necklace. They said, oh, this is Ogun. Ogun is the god of iron and the god of war. No, this is a symbol. The story of iron and war is a concept that's tried to explain the transformation that must take place into the human mind and the human character when it is absorbed a certain amount of knowledge about how to be in life and how to react to certain things in life. Transformation is a result of the changes that new information bring on. And so that's the thing that's they're calling Ogun. And it's like a knife cutting through something. It's hard to steal. When you get it, you can't move it. So we gotta understand what is the wisdom behind all of this. I got on a Shango one, you know, I got a whole, you know, oh, my favorite, you know, Ligba. This is all about psychology. Okay? All about understanding the human mind and what the colors represent. Yin or Yang represent the blue, talking about the water, because all of us, all life emerged from water. Olokun, the male aspect of the water is that part of the water that is not penetrated by photosynthesis or sunlight. Yin or Yang is that part of water that's penetrated by sunlight. When the water penetrated by sunlight comes in contact with the water, not penetrated by sunlight, new life is formed. And even now, we sitting out here talking about we are not in water. Air is nothing but very, very thin water. Okay? You're still amphibious. Study history, study the mystery. Voodoo, and basically they got all these little drawings. They say, what is that thing? The calligraphy. See one right up there over my head? That's Ezele Frida, that big brown thing on the red, black, and green sign. Yeah. Ezele Frida. That is one. But what that symbol is, it is the African mind trying to explain what the energy configuration that represents that understanding would look like if you drew it. They call it Bebe.
Bebe. Indeed.
Because everything around us is an energy configuration. You kiss somebody on the lips and something happened in the middle of their body. How does that happen?
Woo! Energy.
Energy. We got enough energy in our body. If we could make ourselves explode, we'd be a nuclear explosion. But it's going to all control harmoniously and balanced, like the universe.
Yeah.
And so I'll study African sacred sciences, chemistry. African spirituality is physics. African spirituality is mathematics, geometry, arithmetic, but with a purpose. The purpose is where it gets its sacredness. Because it's going to talk about the interrelationship of all of those things we call the sciences.
Professor, I just remembered Cash App be bugging out. Somebody said they donated to you and they got refunded right away. There's a limit. They got something to do on Cash App where they put a limit on how much you could receive in a day or something like that. Do you have a PayPal?
Yeah.
What's your PayPal, Professor?
It's my email. AMPONSA3@gmail.com.
SA3?
A like apple, M like man, P like Peter, O like orange, S like Samuel, A like apple, the number 3@gmail.com. I'm Pansa 3.
All right, I'm gonna spell it again because I think you missed the N. It's AMPONSA and the number 3.
Yes.
All right, at Gmail?
At gmail.com.
All right, I'm gonna put.
Pansa is my African spiritual name.
All right. Cash App. If and a lot of y'all are overseas as well. Yeah, somebody said Cash App won't take the payment. Yeah, and I'm gonna put his PayPal in the description. So people will send it straight to PayPal. If you're having a problem with Cash App, we still got 2,000 people here. So I know a lot of people probably had this problem, but send it to PayPal if you are, and we're gonna stop using Cash App too.
Yeah, because I have been reading when they've changed their rules quite a bit.
Yeah, remember they killed the dude that invented Cash App 3 years ago. He got killed. Somebody took it over, and ever since then things been different. PayPal, AMPONSA3@gmail.com. If you're having problems showing the elder love on Cash App, we're gonna do the PayPal route until we get our own. That's something we need to do. Get our own payment processor system, family. So that's something we gotta talk about and come up with on our own.
We've got to go back to, because we went heavily into that when we came out of the slave plantation, into credit unions and into bank and penny savings, and that's how we built all those Black Wall Streets. And then what they did when they realized what we were doing, they did the same thing that Cash App is doing. They changed the rules. They said, well, now you can't open a credit union unless we give you accreditation. We got to license you. Now you can't open a bank unless we approve you to open a bank, and we're going to determine what you have to have. And that's when they started knocking us out of the ball game, especially after the 1930s.
Okay, got you. All right, y'all. So
you need to go back there.
So listen, I can't stress enough. Hit a PayPal if you're having problems, family. with the Cash App. The PayPal is on the screen. I'm gonna make sure I put it in the description as well as in the comment section. Somebody said, "Can someone write it down, please?" I just wrote it in the comments, and I have it on the screen right now. I don't understand what the problem is.
Yeah.
It's on the screen right now.
A like apple, M like man, P like Peter, O like orange, N like Nancy, S like Samuel, A like apple, the number 3 at gmail.com.
Hey, I think listen, man, what a show, what a show, what a show. The elder came on here. It was dropping gem after gem tonight. A lot of y'all that play with the snow bunnies might got a little offended tonight. I hope y'all didn't get too mad. Him and Umar, they go hard on that. So
Yeah. I was listening to Brother Umar the other day. He's harder than me.
yeah, Umar don't play, man, with them snow bunnies. So I mean, hey, to the brothers out there.
Let's just take it. Let me drop this other piece of the sign. We know there's only one race. We know we gave birth to the Asians. We gave birth to the Hindi light ones. We gave birth to this thing that came out of the cave 10,000 years ago because of ecology and stuff. We get that. But if you're deficient physiologically, then you're definitely deficient psychospiritually and spiritually. Okay? Because it means you no longer have the capacity to hold spirit. That's what melanin is about. If you lack melanin, you lose the capacity to hold and contain spirit. Spirit is a form of energy that fuses you back to the rest of the universe. This stuff can get really deep if we want to get deep. I can get Phil Valentine on him. We would really rock.
Yeah, I know y'all can get deep with it. I know.
But to put it on the simple level,
yeah,
because of the crime committed against our mothers and our fathers, that alone should be enough for us to say, we can't go like that. Okay? 500 years, you couldn't figure out something was wrong. 500 years, you didn't realize a crime is being committed against these people, screaming and hollering all through the nights for 500 years, being raped and brutalized, and you sitting up there wearing your pretty little yellow dress. You tell me you didn't know what was going on the plantation? It was all being carried out on your behalf to impress you. So I can't give you, even if my heart had some kind of attachment, my being would say my obligation to my ancestors is too great for me to violate them with your infection. I don't know what else to say.
Hey, I got to close it out, Professor. I want to thank you for coming on the show. Let the people know your contact information if they want to get in touch with you, and let them know if you got anything coming up where they could go see Professor.
ProfessorSmallAfricanWorld.com, ProfessorSmallAfricanWorld.com. I'll be in the UK on May 23rd, 24th, 25th, 26th, Bristol, Manchester, and Birmingham, with the African Liberation Day process by the Pan-African Liberation Movement. In South Carolina on the 20th of the 19th of June, I'll be in Georgetown and Paulus Island, South Carolina. And on the 21st of June, I'll be in Columbia, South Carolina. On May 19th, we'll be, if you live in the New York tri-state area, New Jersey, Connecticut, we are on May 19th at 10 a.m. in the morning, 9 a.m. in the morning, we'll be leaving 125th Street on buses, going to the grave of Malcolm X for our 60th year, celebrating his birthday at his graveside in Ferncliff Cemetery. So you're free to join us. Our buses are free. And that's the OAU and the Sons of Africa. We are the sponsors. It was started by his sister the year he died. I was her bodyguard. I was the imam over the mosque after his death. And we've continued this process ever since then. So come and join us May 19th, celebrate his 100th birthday. Meet at 125th Street between 8:30 and 9:30 in the morning. And we'll all have fun. I'll be at the cemetery waiting for you with others when you get there. Buses come from all over the Northeast every year. And we just let Malcolm know we love him, we respect him, we regard what he did for us as being special. Gave his life.
Indeed. Rest in power to our ancestor, Malcolm X, that spirit who has contributed so much to this realm. I want to thank everybody for tuning in tonight. Once again, wonderful show. I want to thank Professor Small for coming on the show. Thank you to everybody who showed the professor love. Cash App.
Thank you, brothers and sisters, so much.
Indeed. Anytime, Professor. I love to chop it up with you about these topics. Nobody could say it like you, man. You've been through so much. That part where you was talking about segregation and the plantation, that was a hell of a story, man. And I'm glad that you shared that with us, my brother. That was a hell of a story. So thank you once again, Professor. I'm gonna call you on the phone. I'm gonna talk to you soon.
Okay, my brother.
I'm gonna be in New York soon. So when I come to you in Brooklyn now, right?
No, New Rochelle, just across the street from the Bronx.
Okay, all right. I gotta holler at you when I come to New York. I want to do something in person with you, my brother.
Okay, my brother.
I got a new camera and I need that fancy look. I want that fancy look that everybody got. You know what I'm saying?
Listen, technology is technology. We keep expanding it. So you can come up here. I got a bunch of trees in the yard that my bunch of little grandchildren be running around with the squirrels and the rabbits and everything.
Excellent. Yes.
Up there together.
So we're gonna do a wonderful interview, Professor. I'm gonna talk to you soon. Have a good night, my brother.
Peace and blessings, sir.
Peace. All right, family. I will see y'all tomorrow. I don't know who I'm gonna have on the show tomorrow, but I think we might talk about energy vampires. So, you know, the movie Sinners and the vampires, and they kept saying they needed to be invited into the house. And when they get invited, when you give them permission, that's when they are allowed to suck your blood dry. So I think we're going to have a conversation about inviting, unintentionally, of course, inviting energy vampires into your house. And I think that's something that a lot of us unintentionally do. We all do that shit. I mean, you could do that by arguing with somebody, getting into argument. You open up certain energy fields within your body for things. It's going to be a great conversation. It's going to be a great conversation. I think that's something that there's so many unintentional ways to do that. And I think that's something that we have to be reminded of, like, you know what? Because this is the thing. Well, I'll save that for tomorrow. I'll save that. Well, let me say a little piece of it now. A big thing, what opens us up for energy vampires is wanting to be right. And we may be right in that particular instance, but just wanting to be right forces you to get into an argument, which weakens your aura, opens up your aura for low vibration entities. Then boom, next thing you know, you ain't feeling well, or you feeling sick, or you feeling low on energy or whatever, all because you wanted to be right. And that's I should have saved that for tomorrow. But that's one of the things of how we unintentionally open ourselves up to energy vampires and allow them in, wanting to be right. There's a lot of ways. We're gonna drop it. We're gonna kick it tomorrow because I got I got a list for y'all. And we're gonna kick it tomorrow. Shout out to everybody in the chat. I appreciate all of y'all. I hope y'all showed the professor love, man. Make sure, let's take care of our elders. Let's make sure they're doing good. You know, they're not into the technology like a lot of us, so they're not on social media. They're not moving and shaking like some of the younger brothers and sisters. You know, so let's show our elders love. Let's make sure they're comfortable for their remainder of the time down here. We don't have to agree with everything the elders say. You know what I'm saying? Life don't work like that. I ain't agree with everything my mama said. And I love my mama more than anything to infinity. You know what I'm saying? I love my mama to infinity. And I ain't even agree with everything she says. So we're not going to agree with everything everybody says. And that's all right. That is all right, family. That is all right. There's nothing wrong with that at all. But we're going to have a great conversation tonight about unintentionally allowing energy vampires into our circle. With that be said, opening up portals for them to come through. Yep. We're going to go through a whole list of how we unintentionally open up portals for the energy vampires to come through. And that's how they get at you. That's how they end up assassinating some of our greats. So we're going to have a great conversation tomorrow. A shout out to y'all. Have a good night, family. I'm getting out of here. Peace and blessings to all of you.